Hello everyone, my name is PicklixMC, and in this video I'll be telling you everything you need to know about bees and beekeeping, including the best ways to get as much honey and honeycomb as possible, and what you can use it for. Let's get started. First, I'll talk about how you can find bees and how you can get them where you want them. You can find bees inside and around bee nests attached to trees in almost all the biomes with trees in them, like forests and plains. The best biome to find bee nests is a meadow, since every tree inside a meadow is guaranteed to have a bee nest attached to it. However, the meadow is a very rare biome, and there are usually not many trees in it. The next best biome to find bee nests in is a cherry grove, where each tree has a 5% chance to have a bee nest attached to it. Just in this small bunch of cherry trees, there are 4 different bee nests. If you plant a cherry, birch or oak sapling that is within 2 blocks of any flower on the same Y level, then when it grows, there is a 5% chance that it will come with a free bee nest at no extra cost. This trick works in any biome and is useful if you can't find any bee nests in the wild. A bee nest will generate with 2 to 3 bees in it. Once you locate a bee nest, the best way to transport it is to break it with any tool enchanted with Silk Touch, which will give you the bee nest including the bees inside. It is best to do this at night time or when it is raining, because during these times all the bees will go to their nest to sleep, so you can be sure to pick them all up when you break it. If you break a bee nest without a tool enchanted with Silk Touch, the bee nest will not drop and the bees inside will get angry at you. Now that you know how to find and transport bees, let's talk about the behavior of bees, beehives, and bee nests. Bees will leave their hive or nest during the day to collect nectar from flowers up to 22 blocks away from the hive. Bees can collect nectar from all flowers and flower blocks, including cherry leaves, flowering azalea leaves, chorus flowers, cactus flowers, willow roses, and more. Bees cannot collect nectar from flowers in pots and will completely ignore them. When collecting nectar from willow roses and cactus flowers, bees sometimes take damage and can accidentally die. When a bee is carrying nectar, it will drop nectar particles, which will fertilize crops they drop onto, advancing their growth stage by 1, similar to the effect of bone meal. Bees can pollinate up to 10 crops each time they have nectar. After a bee has collected nectar, it will go back to the hive to make honey, which takes about 2 minutes. When the bee finishes making honey and leaves the hive again, the amount of honey in the hive or nest will increase by 1, with a 1% chance of it increasing by 2, up to a maximum of 5. When bees don't have any hive or nest to live in, they will fly around looking for one. If you have 2 bees, you can breed them using any flower or flower block, except for willow roses. This will give you a baby bee. Baby bees collect nectar and make honey just like adult bees, and they will grow up after 20 minutes. You can speed up this growth process by feeding it flowers, which will decrease the time by 10% each time you feed it. Each hive or nest can house a maximum of 3 bees, and bees will keep going back to the same hive or nest to sleep and make honey. Bees can enter their hive from any direction, but can only leave from the front, and can't leave if there is a solid block directly in front of the hive. You're probably wondering what the difference is between a bee nest and a bee hive. The answer is, to bees it makes no difference. Bees treat them both exactly the same, and they can both house a maximum of 3 bees. The only differences are that they look different. The beehive does not require Silk Touch to break, and the beehive can be crafted using 3 honeycomb and 6 planks like this, whereas the bee nest has no crafting recipe. If a beehive or nest has its maximum of 5 honey collected inside, you can fill 1 bottle of honey by right-clicking on it with an empty bottle in your hand, or by using a dispenser pointing into the hive with an empty bottle inside. Rather than collecting honey, if you use a pair of shears by hand or with a dispenser, it will drop 3 honeycombs. You cannot collect honey or honeycombs when the hive or nest is at any honey level other than the maximum of 5. You can tell when a hive or nest is full of honey by looking at its texture, which will change when it's full. When you collect honey or honeycombs from a beehive or nest, the amount of honey inside will go back to 0, and the bees living in the hive will become angry at you for stealing their honey. Later, I'll talk about what happens when bees are angry at the player and how to prevent this from happening. The best place to set up a bee farm is in the nether or end dimension because there is no nighttime or rain in those places, so bees will never stop working. Despite the harsh conditions, bees will happily work as long as they have their presumably air-conditioned hive and nice flowers. I mentioned earlier that bees can become angry at the player. When you break a bee's nest, steal its honey, or hit it, any bees within 22 blocks will become angry at you. When a bee is angry, its eyes will turn red and it will try to sting the player or mob who angered it. Upon being stung by a bee, the player will receive the poison effect for 18 seconds on hard difficulty or 10 seconds on easy or normal difficulty. Bees are completely passive in peaceful difficulty and will never become angry. Bees can only poison the player once before losing their stinger and dying after about 1 minute. If an angry bee doesn't sting you, then after a random amount of time between 20 and 39 seconds it will become neutral again. You're probably thinking that this feature makes honey farming really annoying, as just trying to collect honey will not only put your life at risk, but the entire bee population too. Luckily, there is an extremely easy way to stop bees from getting angry when you collect honey or honeycombs from their hive. If there is a campfire within 5 blocks below the bee nest or hive, then, similarly to real life, the smoke from the campfire will calm the bees and stop them from getting angry at you when you steal their honey. This is an example of an easy to set up, space-efficient design for a small manual honey or honeycomb farm. There are also automatic farms like this one, which use comparators to detect when a beehive is full of honey and use dispensers to harvest it. Finally, let's talk about all the great things that you can do with honey and why you would want to bother dealing with bees to get it. You can drink a honey bottle, which will restore 6 hunger points and 1.2 saturation. It will also clear the poison effect, kind of like milk, but only for poison. You can also craft 1 bottle of honey into 3 sugar, making it a possibly easier to get alternative for sugarcane. The most helpful use for honey bottles, however, is the honey block, which can be crafted with 4 honey bottles in a square. You can also turn a honey block back into 4 honey bottles, which is not a very well-known crafting recipe and can be useful for compact honey storage. Honey blocks are especially useful in redstone contraptions, since they work almost the same as slime blocks, sticking to blocks touching them, but they do not stick to slime blocks, which means you can have multiple moving parts right next to each other without them sticking together. Slime blocks are very bouncy and can bounce items, mobs, and players around, but honey blocks are the complete opposite. When a player or mob is standing on a honey block, they cannot jump, and walking on honey is about 60% slower than normal. Falling onto a honey block will reduce fall damage by 80%, just like hay bales. When against a wall made of honey, you will fall slowly, similarly to descending a ladder. This mechanic also works with items, and you can get some very cool effects using this mechanic. The other item you can get from bees is honeycomb. Honeycomb can be used to craft beehives, candles, and honeycomb blocks. Honeycomb can also be used to wax copper, which will stop it from changing oxidization state, or to wax signs, which will prevent them from being edited. If you would like to learn more about copper, make sure to check out my guide to copper, which will be linked in the description of the video. Honeycomb blocks are mostly decorative blocks, with their only other use being that they are the only block to have the sticky block type when absorbed by a sulfur cube. That's about it for all things bees and honey. Remember to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, as it helps a lot. And thanks for watching.